My new method of doing the World War IIIs and stuff like that, I think it's going quite well. My Google AdSense got paid yesterday. Well, saw what I'm going to get paid. It takes them a while to deposit it. It helped out a bit. I can only imagine what it'd be without the censorship. And I think YouTube has backed off a little bit too because I guess so many people complaining. So, I know I've got at least another month out of this anyway. I'm on the wire still, but I can keep that going for at least another month. After the election in the States, and the fact that up here Justin Trudeau has signed CETA, which I think has a lot of media stuff in it. Basically, at some point, my channel might not be viewable in your country, let alone my own country. Everything's going to be banned at some point. So I don't know what the plan B is from there. But I'll take these as far as we can go. And anyway, I've got some short stuff here, but we'll just start in on Yemen. Now, there's two incidents right now. There's apparently 2 missiles that were fired at the USS Mason, and apparently something else yesterday or the day before. But they can't really say for sure what it was that was fired. And they came in very close to shore. Why would they come in that close? But anyway, so they could be trying to set up a way for the United States to fight the Yemeni directly. Because really, if you're fighting Yemen, you're fighting Iran. And that could be a stepping stone to get into Iran. So, because the Houthis are basically fighting with Saudi Arabia. But anyway, we'll have to keep an eye on that. So, 2.3 billion from the UK, and I forget how many billion from the United States to support the White Helmets. Now, 145 of them have been killed out of the 3,000. Now, these questionable White Helmets, the ones that are supposed to be getting Peace Prize awards, anybody that gets a Nobel Peace Prize, I really, really, really question now. Obama got a Nobel Peace Prize for what exactly? I don't know, for being the first black president or something like that. Created more war than anybody else. The thing is that the Peace Prize, it doesn't seem to represent real true peace. These White Helmets are George Soros funded and many other funded, they're basically, they're not the good guys. Maybe some of them are, but it's like the United Nations. There's a handful in the United Nations that actually believe they're doing world peace. They don't realize they're working for a Rockefeller organization to enslave the world. And again, these people are more believing that, well, the UN is such a good holier than thou, it should control the world. They don't really, they're utopianistic, right? But then the people at the top, they do everything George Soros wants, and Rothschilds and Rockefellers, right? And they fund NATO and give the green light to go to war everywhere. That type of thing. So the United Nations is definitely a corrupt organization. That said, Boris Johnson over there in the UK, I don't know much about him. I've heard a lot of mixed emotions about this guy. I don't know him that well. But I listened to about a 15-minute speech of his. And in that, yes, he is a neocon. I keep hearing how he's communist-leaning, or New World Order communist-leaning. I don't know if that's really true or not, but he does seem to be a bit altruistic, a bit anti-white, open mass immigration. We have to help everybody else but ourselves, that type of thing. He does come off that way from the little bit that I know about him. The other thing is, and this is all the stuff I really care about, is what they say. He's talking about the no-fly zone in Syria, and basically to shoot down Russian jets. Basically, he doesn't say Russia, but who else is flying in there, right? Say we need to enforce a no-fly zone. So he's talking about British fighter pilots shooting down Russian pilots. It's bad enough, okay, from this side of the pond to even think about what the consequences would be. That is a damn fly. I'm going to call you Hillary. Go away, Hillary. It's a Hillary fly. Did I catch it? No, I didn't. I gotta get my fly killing thing. But for the UK to shoot down a Russian jet being that close to Russia, that is a really, really, really bad idea. You really want to avoid that as much as possible. I get it. The British equipment is pretty good, but the numbers aren't there. The British soldiers are good. The numbers aren't there. It's the same problem we have in Canada. Our soldiers, our pilots, our Navy guys, they're excellent, but there's just not enough of them. So really, do you want to be the one spearheading the campaign to shoot down Russian jets. Now, there's a lot going on in Syria right now, stuff that, for most of you that following, you're probably going to start to see some new equipment coming in on the scene. We know about the S-300s and stuff like that. The S-300s protects the fighters up in the air, the Su-34s. The Su-34 pilots, these guys are a caliber up from the Su-24 pilots, although the roles are similar. The Su-34 is kind of the replacement. The Su-30 pilots are going to be good pilots. These aren't going to be nugget pilots. These guys are going to, they don't just throw anybody in those super fighters. These are very powerful machines. The Su-34s, although it's a fighter bomber, they train to dogfight with these things against Su-27s and win from time to time. They're very maneuverable for their size and weight. They've got long range, very powerful radar jamming, etc., etc. And working that with the air defense systems on the ground and a few other systems on the ground, the Russians are really locking down Syria. They pretty much, maybe not officially, but you could say they've just established the no-fly zone. So it's not about NATO or the UK establishing a no-fly zone in Syria. The Russians already have. They already have. They've got the S-300 system coming in there. The Panzer S-1s, they're in there. Again, as I come down my list here, you'll see what I mean. So that guy, again, I don't know where he stands, what he is, I don't know if he's just a prominent politician or if he's, I don't know what his role is there in the UK. I've heard his name tossed around a few times, but I don't know him very well. But everything I keep hearing about him, and then, of course, listening to him speak for about 15 minutes, I'm not saying the guy's good or the guy's bad, but he clearly, if you truly understand what a no-fly zone means, and I'm pretty sure these people do, you're asking to go to war with Russia. The idea that we're just going to shoot down Syrian airplanes, but Russia's made it very clear. If you shoot down Syrian airplanes or attack Syrian troops like they did and killed those guys, we're going to respond in kind. Force is going to meet force. Russia's already drawn the line in the sand. It's not this arbitrary red line like a bomb or whatever. No, it's try it and you'll see what happens. Now, Russia will shoot down, they're going to shoot down a shitload of NATO aircraft over there at some point. It's going to be a bluff call. Again, like I've always said about the Russians, the Chinese, they stay covert. If they win, they go for something. If they win everything, but if they lose, they don't lose that much. The Russians, if they go for something, it's all in. If they win the whole table, but if they lose an arm. And that's why they're going to shoot down NATO airplanes. It's going to be Putin. I don't think it's going to be the beginning of Putin playing the madman, but it could be pretty close. I do believe they will detonate a nuclear warhead for the world to see probably just after the U.S. election. Because if Hillary Clinton wins, the idea is to show Hillary Clinton as a crazy person. So if the only way they can do that, and Russia doesn't care about pressure from the outside world saying, oh, well, they're this or that. They don't give into that. Other countries do, but no, it's never. Even Putin said it the other day, the accusations they're making about Russia striking the hospitals. Now, whether they did or didn't, well, first off, we don't even know where the hospital is. The United States will not say any details on this hospital. So we don't even know if a hospital was hit or not. When the U.S. hit hospitals in Syria, they showed pictures of it. They showed the hospital sign on the rooftop where, the bombed out part. They show everything. They got the cameras in there for weeks on end, talking to people, whatever. There's just no evidence that this hospital ever existed. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But, it just seems like there's no evidence. And even the State Department, we're not going to release anything. So, but anyway, you get the idea. So Russia will call the bluff. Putin, the closer we get to war, the more the madman, like North Korea, Kim Jong-un style, Putin will become. But he's doing it to get the world's attention, to make the world scared, not to and more importantly, to make the world listen to their politicians. Because today you don't care when you're making your peanut butter sandwiches for your kids, but tomorrow when they say you've got to kiss your kids goodbye because you're going to die on the front line for a banker war, you're going to pay attention. But the thing is if we can catch your attention before it gets to that point, the best way to do it, and they've already talked about it, I forget the name of the island in the Baltics there, close to Scotland, the Russians are talking about doing a nuclear warhead test. Not a dummy warhead, a real thermal nuclear weapon, mushroom cloud. And I can just picture it. It's going to be like this. Oh, okay, look at the big boom. Wow, that shook the planet the whole way around. The shockwave went around 3 times.
That is very big. We knocked out the power in Eastern Europe. We're so very sorry. But did you see how big that was? Could you imagine that on your cities? It would be very devastating. Let's talk. So chicken moy. Yeah, that's chicken moy means my bunny, I think, in Russian. I only know like a handful of Russian words. That's about it. But you get the idea. That's what they're going to do. And Putin said, yeah, we're not going to give in to media pressure and stuff like that. Russia wouldn't be Russia if it gave into the, oh my God, we're on the world stage, we look like this. Or they're going to demonize, like Putin said, they're going to demonize us anyway. They've been doing it for decades. They're not going to stop it. It's just they're doing it at feverish pitch now. So the Russians, yeah, they're not going to cave into that. So you can accuse them of anything. It doesn't matter. They're not going to care. Even if they did it, it wouldn't matter. They don't care. So crimes against humanity, all that stuff, it's just not going to... And you really got, a lot of people got to look at this. Are you kidding me? The highway of death, strafing people with A-10s, with depleted uranium in Iraq. A-10 just thousands of vehicles, there's like 10,000 vehicles on the road. Thousands of people dead. Thousands of people dead. Rockets, JDAMs, these Hydra 70 rockets, JDAMs, free fall bombs, 30 millimeter depleted uranium at 15 to 18 to 30 rounds a second coming out of that A-10. All. And then you're going to talk about bombing hospitals. Yeah. I don't know how these people can even live with themselves. Really, the hypocrisy. When you do it yourself. And A-10s have recently had hit, and this was proved by the eyewitnesses. This was proved by air footage. A-10s did hit a hospital in Syria a couple of months ago. And, it's the only airstrike that they actually done. The Americans aren't doing airstrikes, really. So we know that it's either probably going to be Russian or Syrian jets that hit, again, they're hitting civilian areas too. But the thing is and Donald Trump really brought this out as a good point. I'm glad to hear somebody say it out loud, and glad that his sources were complaining about it. His sources, about 200 military generals and high brass and stuff like that, commanders and generals and what have you, saying, why do we give, when we find out, our intelligence tells us that al-Baghdadi is over here, whatever. Okay, we give them 6 weeks notice that we're going to be bombing that area, giving the jihadists time to get out. So they're bombing empty buildings when they do bomb. The other thing, and again, it was all hearsay, but U.S. pilots were complaining that they sit on the tarmac so long in a hold pattern, waiting to be launched, but by the time they launch and they hit their target, there's nothing there to hit. You know what I mean? So it's like, purposely, this is Al-Qaeda's Air Force. When they do hit something, they either hit Assad's troops, which they've done a few times. It's just this last one, they killed Russian personnel in it. So the Russians responded by hitting those other, the U.S. and the Mossad and all these other agents and the Saudi agents and Qatari and all that, killing 30 of their intelligence officers on purpose. And the official Russian comment was no comment whether they did it or not. It wasn't no, we didn't do it. It was no comment. That was a tit for tat. Fire meets fire. I can only imagine the Putin-Obama conversation right after that strike. I can only imagine if they talked at all. That's the scary part. You have to keep in mind, right now, we're living in an era where there is no open line communication with Russia. Diplomatic ties have been cut with Russia. There's sanctions on Russia. There's no longer that connection. Pick up the phone. Hey, call this off. The U.S. is now starting to change its position in Syria. Okay, we're willing to resume talks again. So the Russians had to come up with something big, and I think a lot of it is just out in the public to see that, okay, the Russians do this. This is what they do. Like, okay, the Americans are talking about a no-fly zone. Put the no-fly zone in now. Call their bluff. Beat them to the chase, because if you wait till after, they'll bring in a no-fly zone. But if you're bringing in stuff and you're saying, hey, we're going to do this, 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 and this, it makes people nervous, particularly people that have to fight these wars. And I know there's a lot of guys, we're going to kick Russia's ass. No, it's not going to be that cut and dry. And I think the proof is in the pudding. I'm not saying Russia would win a war. If it was just Russia and the United States going to war, non-conventional warfare, I think the Americans would probably win in the long run. But at what cost? Like what? 300 million dead? You're going to have like 5 people left on the planet, whoever wins that war. The Russians, again, out of their 100 million, they'd have like 8 people left, 5 people left, whatever. I get it. And the smart, and again, if you look at, even if it's just rhetoric, it's the idea that
the responses could lead us into a, a Russian pilot and an American pilot clipping wings in the middle of the sky. Next thing you know, a Kursk-style incident, or what we call the Turk-style incident, shooting down the Su-24. We get too many more of those. Two warships get the wrong signals, launch on each other. We could have, a flash in the pan World War III. It's heck. A Black Bear back in the Cold War nearly scrambled a bunch of Delta Darts or Delta Daggers with nukes in the belly, ready to, and B-52s ready to go after Russia in Alaska. When it turned out it was just a Black Bear coming over the fence, they thought they were being invaded. This is back in the 1950s. Operation Able Archer, very close to thermonuclear war. And thank God for that guy in Russia, or else if he didn't stand down, he would have launched. They would have launched. And now with Putin's cleansing of, people who won't hesitate type of deal, it's a recipe for disaster. And I believe he's going to get guys that won't hesitate at all to launch nukes. The problem is if it's a misguided signal that they think they're being attacked. I mean, the technology is a lot better than what it was in the first Cold War. There's no doubt about that. But things things aren't foolproof. You can get a miscalculation or a bad radio signal or something like that, and let's say incoming meteors. Meteors sometimes look like warheads coming in on radar. You just never know. Anyway, Gary Miley, was quoting the Russian general saying that we are in the end game now. That's what the Russian general is saying. So the Russians are definitely preparing for war, or prepared for war, because they believe that the United States is really going to attack them. I'm not trying to make Russia the innocent out here. Yes, they've milked it. They've gotten, all the stuff going on has helped them to boost their military too, billions and billions and billions of dollars. So again, they're milking it too. That said, if you listen to people talk, you get an idea. Even if they lie, they always give you the idea of the plan, whether they're lying or not. So if you listen to Putin in his 3-hour, I don't always get the chance to listen to all 3 hours of his speeches or whatever. Usually, when he does his Q&A type things, yes, a lot of it is scripted. It's kind of what they do. But that said, you hear a lot of what they want to do and what they're doing. The only thing you hear about Putin is, no, we don't want war, back off, we'll defend ourselves, whatever. They're always in a defensive position. Doesn't mean they're necessarily in a defensive position. They could be going for broke, because remember, they win big if the economic collapse hits. And yes, it'll hit Russia, it'll hit China, but it will destroy the United States without firing a shot. So the main thing Russia and China really want is to win this war. That's why they haven't started the war yet. Is because all they have to do is wait for the economic collapse to really become so noticeable that it doesn't matter if they say people are starting to notice their jobs are going away, the wealth is going away, that type of thing. So it's already working. All they have to do, they'll probably let 20 Russian fighters get shot down before they do anything. The only thing that gets a response for Russia, in my opinion, is a deliberate attack on Russia. You have to go past the Russian border. So NATO has to fly into Russia. They have to send a cruise missile into Russia. Doesn't mean the Russians won't do something in preemptive strike, but they will. The only thing that gets Russia to respond in full to get the bear to charge is you have to go into Russia. Which, if you do that, then you're the one provoking war, and the war will be over before it begins, because the poor bastards that are over there right now will not have backup and support coming for them. Why? Even if they're ordered to, you're going to have a military coup in the United States if we intentionally get into a war with Russia, because of a bunch of Zionist neocons for the Greater Israel Project in Washington, right? But anyway, that General Mark Miley there, talking, we're going to beat you harder than you've ever been beaten before, and he's basically one of those kind of brackish generals that he sounded pretty thick anyway. I don't know what the man's history is, if he ever served or if he's just one of those appointed generals or whatever. I don't know. But the idea is that this is a guy that thinks that going to war with Russia is probably a good idea. He comes off as that type. And no, it's not a good idea. There's no, that is the option. People don't think, this guy's going to win, is that guy going to win? No, none of us are going to win, Anyway. Russia's going to make Tartus base permanent. They got the go-ahead. and they're going to do that. And they're also opening, possibly, they're working on negotiations with Egypt. Egypt is a little bit of a wild card as well, although they're a little bit more behind the scenes and not directly in it. They do seem to be definitely, if you've been following my World War III updates, you can see Egypt is clearly moving towards Russia. And one of the things they're going to be doing, Russia, again, now opening up another air base, possibly in Egypt by 2019. So again, Russia, who had almost no bases around the world, they're opening up Nicaragua. They opened up a radar station there, sent some T-72s in. They're opening up bases in Cuba. Obviously, they got Venezuela. There's all these places. I think they're also working with, although not much yet, Argentina. All these, again, they're starting to mobilize. They're starting to get all these places. Syria, they're becoming more permanent. The base of Tartus. Latakia base is also going to be permanent for the Russian Air Force. So you got Tartus and Latakia, which were, they're there now permanently. The Russians have pretty much said, we're going to stay in Syria until the job's done. It's a permanent occupation now. And they have the okay by the Syrian government. But this comes on the heels of, go away, Hillary. That little fly named Hillary. But anyway, yeah, you get the idea. You could see that this is not the norm. This is abnormal. This is not what Russia was doing. This is clearly a step towards more war. Now, just as a kind of it sounds a bit of off the trail here, but in France they've now unofficially, because the government can't admit that there's no-go zones, Sharia no-go zones in France, because that's announcing to everybody that you have a failed state. But it looks like there's about 700 of them now. And these places are getting very riled up. Very riled up. So yeah, you're going to have your your 10th Crusade kickoff. Again, I'm still predicting England for the big fight, but we might see small skirmishes before that. I think those days are coming. I think after the next election, particularly in Germany, you're going to see ramping up. You're already starting to see the people starting to lash out at these migrants a bit, not much, but it's going to get worse. And when it gets tit for tat, the migrants are going to be screwed. That type of thing. Yeah. As far as for the United States, and if you're an American soldier, you might want to. This might concern you, but if they want to put a no-fly zone in Syria, to enforce it, they believe it's going to take about 70,000 troops. So yeah, more war. Again, Obama. Has anybody seen Obama in the past 3 weeks? It's just like, is he out golfing? He's like, he's not going to do anything. He's in that lame duck president session, right? So, but yeah, it's like 70,000 troops. So, in order to go kill Russia, and trust me, these 70,000 troops, they will be taken out very quickly with Russian air power. If an American pilot shoots down a Russian pilot, there's more Russians there right now, in that sense. And you have to understand, the Navy there. So that can escalate from 70,000 to 700,000 troops like that once it starts going. But the thing is that the reason why it puts these troops at risk is very simple, that the Russians can fight back. The Syrian Air Force probably couldn't get close to a U.S. air base, but I can guarantee you the Russians, they might lose a couple aircraft in the process, but they would definitely, or even a warship or two, but they would definitely have the weaponry to strike U.S. bases. So where exactly are these bases in Syria? Well, we know the Americans have opened up, France has opened up bases in Syria. Everybody's opening up all these bases in Syria without the Syrian permission. And again, for what? Why are we in Syria in the first place? For regime change? You know what I mean? No, we're there to fight ISIS. No, we're not. We're arming ISIS. This is clearly, Al-Nusra is now called Al-Sham or whatever. Al-Sham or whatever they call them now. But it's basically Al-Qaeda. So Al-Qaeda turned to Al-Nusra, Al-Nusra turned to Al-Sham, and Al-Sham is supposed to be the new moderate rebels. But these guys are all built into ISIS. So it's pretty much openly admitted now. How they spin it is one thing, but when you look at it, if you were just watch the TV with the sound off, you're not going to be able to tell an ISIS fighter from a moderate rebel. And there are no moderate rebels. They're all pretty much backed, ISIS. And they're all backed by the United States and stuff like that. So I think U.S. soldiers, the irony is this: you're going to be flying, and this is what I'm waiting for, is for a U.S. airplane to get shot down by an American-made Stinger missile, just like in Afghanistan. they thought it was Apache helicopters were in friendly fire incidents when they kept getting shot down by these Stinger missiles, and they're like, no, but these are an older Stinger missile. They're not the newest variant. And then they realized it was the Mujahideen that were armed by the CIA. And then it comes out, oh, well, no, it's because we armed them. So we arm the people we fight in the future, right? But the Mujahideen, yes, they overthrew were overthrown by the Taliban, but they fought alongside them, during the occupation, right? So same thing here. You got ISIS and whatever, Al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda and the Free Syrian Army fighting together with American-made weapons, MADPAD launchers, Stinger missiles, TOW missiles, whatever. Of course, there's going to be a handful of them that are going to attack U.S. convoys and stuff like that. And, of course, they'll try to blame it on the Syrians or the Russians. But, again, the soldier on the ground that sees his guys getting blown apart by his own weapons, his guys getting shot by M16s held by jihadis. No, they didn't just find these things. These things were dropped off to these jihadis, right? They're going to be pissed. They're going to be pissed. Okay, remember a while back, again, don't be afraid to go over some of my World War II or World War III, older World War III videos, even if they're a couple years old. But a good while back, remember I was talking about Russia's new jamming system a while back that they jammed the Israeli aircraft? Well, it's called, I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, but the Kasuka jamming system in Syria. And they've basically got it around their bases and stuff like that. And basically, it jams satellites so the Americans can't see what's going on, NATO can't see what's going on. It also intercepts communications, and the Israelis can't see what's going on, and it does that. So they have this jamming system in there, and it seems to work well because there's a couple of incidents where they've blocked, they've jammed, Israeli radar and stuff like that, and sent F-15s chase, Su-30s have chased, I think on 2 or 4 different occasions, have chased Israeli pilots back into Israel. Basically, I think they were foiling an Iran strike to the point now there's no way for Israel to possibly strike Iran. Remember, all this destabilization in the Middle East does come on the Greater Israel Project. It is what it is. If you know what the Greater Israel Project, then you understand what we're looking at. And the Russians are fighting against that. So I'm not saying the Russians are the good guys. I'm just saying, you're caught in a mob war right now, if you want to look at it that way. So this system, okay, comes in on the back of 36 to 50 Panzer S-1 air defense systems going to the Syrians. Remember what I said about the Russians training up the Syrians? At some point you would just see the Syrians getting all this wickedly new equipment, and the Russians always come up, oh no, we had this agreement in 2008. Oh, we had this agreement in 2005. No, they didn't. They're just saying that now. But yes, the Russians are training up the Syrian army like you wouldn't believe, the Air Force, everything. So it takes a while. It takes like 6 months, 8 months to train up recruitable recruits, right? So a good year's worth of training. So we know Assad has gotten a handful of MiG-29s, newer MiG-29s. So I can imagine that's their best pilots flying those. I think it's only a matter of time before they get more Su-34s or Su-24s and Su-27s. I think they're going to get those kind of super fighters. But it looks like they're getting the ground defense first. So 36 to 50 of these systems can cover a good proportion of the areas of Syria, particularly the bases. And they're going to have up to 700 missiles supplied to them. That's big news. That tells you there's a no-fly zone. And the Syrian Arab Army and Air Force is going to be able to enforce this with Russia's backing. So that tells me the Russians are in there, plus the S-300 missile system. The S-500, 400, and 500 missile systems are already there. The Syrians are already using the S-200 missile system. So there's a lot of the air defense that's in there is not like what Saddam had. Saddam didn't really have, he had some SA-9s and a few other things. He didn't have a really good air defense. So now the Syrians they have surpassed the Iraqi military, Saddam-era Iraqi military by a lot. They're getting new tanks, all that stuff. So right now, air, land, and sea, so to speak, is really covered by the Russians. But it's also now being spread out to the Syrians. And plus, again, the Russians pretty much have the Tartus naval port. This is basically right on Israel's doorstep at that point. That type of thing. They've got the country pretty much locked down, and on the far side where the Black Sea is, the Russians have sent more, flotillas out there with warships of all kinds, which can fire those caliber missiles, which are very long-range cruise missiles, very accurate. Doesn't mean any of this stuff is not stoppable. But you have to understand that it's good enough that it can take on pretty much any other navy in the world, that type of thing. These warships can also use the S-300 system aboard it, meaning you have air, land, and sea covering each other. The Russians have got it all in there. They've already established that. The Americans do not have that covered. They have it partially covered, but not covered. The Russians moved in faster. So that means, even all the media spinning of how bad Russia is right now, Russia is basically going to take Aleppo and Damascus and Latakia, and they're going to take all these places. It's just a matter. The speculation, even from the United Nations, is that Assad will have ISIS ousted from Aleppo by Christmas. And Assad said, once Aleppo has fallen, it's already fallen. Once it's retaken, it pretty much, that's the end game for the United States. They now have to find another place to start war, or else the petrodollar is going to collapse. And the thing is that as Syria stabilizes, the United States and Israel and Saudi Arabia will be destabilized, and same with Turkey. And it looks like it's going to go that way. John Kerry said it best: if we can't get into Iran, or if we lose Syria, the petrodollar will fall. He wasn't lying. He knows what he was talking about there. Even though the guy's a scumbag, it's like, he does lie about a lot of stuff, but when he has a slip of the tongue in honesty, it's usually something that's, this is the bigger prize. This is what the Russians are holding out for. They're basically saying, either go to war with us or your dollar is going to collapse. That's what they're saying. So the Russians are calling the bluff. But if the Americans call the bluff of the Russians, then they lose an arm, because then we're in World War III. And the Russians and the Chinese both have the same pact. If it looks like we can't win the war conventionally, it goes nuclear. So after 2 weeks, there's no more high-tech stuff left anywhere. We're into an analog war, which, in an analog war, Russia has the tank superiority, the aircraft superiority. They would win. They are designed to take on NATO as a whole. And right now it's so closely matched, but they also have home advantage. So, yeah, to take on Russia, even there's so many, and yes, there's a lot of military commanders that will say things like, oh, we need to beef up our military because we can't take on Russia. But there are ones that are saying we can't take them on because their tank superiority will kill us in Eastern Europe. They'll overrun Eastern Europe like that. Their air power in Eastern Europe, they can't take it. The rest of Europe, maybe they can hold off the Russians. There'll be a line of scrimmage, but that type of thing. But the thing is Russia can support itself. These smaller European countries can't support themselves through. If they, the Russians will take them out very quickly. Even if the Russians take a big loss, they can recoup the losses fast enough because they have enough resources and size of country to do this. The other countries don't. Think of Britain in World War II. If it wasn't for the Allies stepping in, Britain would have probably been taken by the Nazis. There's no doubt about that. It's just how long would it have taken? You know what I mean? That type of thing. The reason why Nazi Germany fell is they had 16 nations against it. Okay, but the idea that in Canada, the United States, whatever, the manufacturing for the war machine was sustainable. There wasn't a factory bombed here. You know what I mean? Like we had. The closest Germany could get was with its U-boats off our coast, and we sunk a couple of them there. But the case in point is we don't live in that area anymore, where Russian bombers can be halfway in the Atlantic Ocean and still reach your shore with cruise missiles. They don't even have to rely on ships to get there. The submarines, same thing. Their submarines launch cruise missiles. They've got more submarines than just about anybody, and they're very advanced. So I'm not saying they win. Every time they fire something, they might lose something, but they can recover faster because they can ramp up production just as quick, as they can in the States. The difference is the States right now, where its problem is it got rid of most of its manufacturing. So to start all that up, the Russians are going to take that out right away. I'm not saying the Americans are going to take that out right away, but the Russians seem to already have worked on their plan B a little better. So I'm not saying the Russians have better equipment or anything like that. Really, is an Su-35 going to be any better than an F-22 or vice versa? I think the better man wins, the better pilot wins, the better ship captain wins, the better tank crew wins. Who gets the first shot is going to be the deciding factor. If a T-90 gets the first shot on an Abrams, goodbye Abrams. If an Abrams gets a first shot on a T-90, there's a good chance that T-90 is not going to exist, especially if you know where to hit it. That type of thing. That said, the Russians are going to be fighting a more defensive war. There's no doubt about that. Everything they're doing is defensive-oriented when you look at it. Their missile systems, their air defense system, the S-300 missile system, they don't know how to beat these things because they haven't turned them on yet. They don't know how they work. So they might only work for a little while before you figure out how to beat these systems. But even with what Raytheon's coming up, it doesn't really beat the systems. The idea is just bombard a whole bunch of missiles at it until it overwhelms it. But they have to turn the things on for you to find them. That's the thing. If you don't know where they are, these things move every 15 minutes. They're mobile. They move every 15 minutes, and if you don't know where they move to, by the time you find them, everything gets shot down. So that's the problem. It's the same in the Arctic. The S-300s missile systems are all over the place, and 400s and 500s, and they have extremely long range, like that Russian general said. Any Allied or any coalition aircraft that attempts to attack our guys is going to be surprised at the range of our weaponry. You're not going to get close to it. So where's the no-go zone for the no-fly zone for the Russians? Is it 20 miles out or 100 miles out? I don't know. What warning do you get? Whatever. I think they're just going to shoot down a couple of jets just to put us on the brink, to call the bluff. That's a Putin wild man card that he could play. I think before that you see a thermonuclear warhead detonation to get the world's attention, to get the world to understand that you can no longer pay attention to the Kardashians and stuff like that on the media. You got to get involved in what's going on in the world today. It is going to affect you severely. So again, who would win is not really what you have to look at. It's how much are we going to lose in this war. It's going to be a great depopulation. That said, if we go to war, there's not a world elite that won't be assassinated right after, because unlike World War I, World War II, we have names, pictures, and faces of the people. This is one of the things after the Nuremberg trials that they had a hard time tracking down Nazi war criminals. Was who were they? Because they didn't know what they looked like. You only had to have eyewitness accounts. And as the year goes by, people say, we think that's him. He looks a little different. He's a little older, but we can't say for sure. And a lot of guys got to pass. You won't have that with Rockefeller Rothschilds. They're well documented. It's not a matter of who stored what on a computer. It's grab a magazine. The magazine, you're looking for this guy. We'll use aging technology. All this technology, because we know about this technology, even if it gets all wiped away. We know that, okay, well, to build the first computer, we have to build the first chip, and we have to do that, microchip and whatever. That stuff gets reinvented again, fairly quickly. So what took hundreds of years to get to, and then what's taken about 50 years of technology. The quantum leap in technology in 50 years is astronomical. You can imagine what they're not showing us. That type of thing. So you have that going on. That gets all reborn again, and then it gets reborn on several sides. There will be a new beginning out of this, and the world elites will not be able to start up an old banking system. Yes, the masses will be, you guys are going to be our saviors or whatever. Okay, all you need to do is be chipped and, basically take the mark of the beast, as they call it. Because that's David Rockefeller's plan, is to chip every single human being like cattle. But not his friends, of course. That type of thing. So you get the idea of what they want to do. So there's not a world elite that's going to, they stick their head out of it. They better have a lot of supply in their bunkers, because that's going to be their tombs. They're never going to be allowed out of there. And psychologically, I don't care how big the bunkers are. Like, some of these bunkers are just ginormous. I think mutiny will take over in there. Think of all these guys that are going to be in there without wives and stuff like that, and without their families. They're going to be in there. They're going to see these elites having these, champagne type parties or whatever, and they're going to see women in there, and they're going to, a year goes by, 2 years go by. I say a couple of months go by, and they go nuts. And then next thing you know, you're just going to have mutiny. We want some too. We're protecting you. There's nobody else in here but us. You could share now. But the world elites don't share. They never did. They never will. So, yeah. Yeah, it'll be their own purgatory. It'll be pretty nasty. Last bit of news. B-2 bombers, the stealth bombers, did 2 dry run dummy nuke test drops in Nevada. I've also heard they were doing this, and I know they were doing this with B-52s in the Baltics, from Poland and Latvia, and I think somewhere else. But anyway, Lithuania. They basically have these B-52s, and the Russians are on, because they're flying up and down the Russian coast, right? Basically doing nuclear bombing runs with B-52s. Again, these are shows of force. They've been doing them for the last couple of weeks ago over in the Baltics. Now they've dropped 2 dummy nukes, two runs with B-2s. This comes on the heels of everything going on in Syria, that type of thing. Is this a normal thing? Well, B-2s are designed for that job. How normal is this? Something to keep an eye on. But the timing is kind of, again, escalation. Even Donald Trump said, look, Russia's nuclear arsenal is getting phenomenally bigger. Ours is dwindling. So one thing about Trump is, I don't think he brings us to war with Russia and China, but he will militarize. He is a firm believer in the military, that's for sure. I don't think he becomes a war hawk like you would think. I think he would probably become, the United States would be more like a mercenary army. Sure, we'll go and defend you, but you're going to pay us back. And one of the things he's been saying, like, all these NATO countries and countries like Saudi Arabia and stuff like that got tons and tons of cash wanting us to defend them, but yet they don't pay hardly a cent. You know what I mean? And I know Donald Trump knows about the oil corruption in the pipelines. He knows. There's no doubt about that. So I think what he does is, well, if you're not going to pay, we're not going to defend you. And I think he might be using that as the excuse to get back to a non-interventionist policy. That would be the best policy for the United States. It would be very bloody in the world if the United States stops policing it for the first little while, but it stabilizes. The worst part is the countries that have nukes, such as Saudi Arabia, Israel, Pakistan, India, they could go at it. We'll survive it if they go at it, and at some point, yes, Saudi Arabia will be thrown under the bus, and then all cards are off. Who will be running Saudi Arabia? That type of thing. So Iran with its rockets, if they have nuclear weapons, they bought them. I don't think they're going to make nuclear weapons. I think they're just going to buy them. It's cheaper and easier. And they're friends with the Russians, so they probably already have it. I think they're going to put more focus on long-range rockets. The Iranians and the North Koreans have been working on long-range rockets for a long time. I think they share technology in that sense. North Korea and Iran are about, they do some trade with each other, very little. But anyway, these B-2 bombing runs, we'll have to keep an eye on that. I can imagine they would be dropping B-61 nukes. The latest B-61 nukes have variable yield warheads, which, you can minimize damage or maximize damage. I think everybody just puts everything on 10, you know what I mean? But these are still, you have to kind of get over the target to drop them. So this is a huge disadvantage for the Americans because you need Russia can fire, its KR-55s and put, like 2,000 mile out, the newest version of their cruise missiles, caliber missiles or whatever. They can put warheads on those. They're, variable yield warheads as well, and not as big as like an ICBM warhead, but, enough to take out, say, an airbase or slight infrastructure, or, things like Lockheed Martin manufacturing, Boeing, all these the manufacturing gets hit first. Means of making war, fuel refineries, that stuff. You don't even really need variable yield nukes, but if it's a tricky thing to hit, they might use a bigger boom. That's always been the Russian philosophy. If you don't have accuracy, you just make a bigger boom. Problem is their bigger booms now have more accuracy. So with that said, we'll have to wait and see, but again, the ramping up is at fever pitch. I think we're not quite on the brink yet, but we're being set up for the brink. I think when American airplanes get shot down, or British airplanes, or whoever, coalition airplanes get shot down over Syria, that's when the world is going to have to take notice of what's going on. That's when people that think my posts are crazy and don't follow them will start to listen, meaning family and friends. There's people out there, and I still get comments to people who follow. They're like, Reg, you're never going to do it because, cooler heads are going to prevail. But we're dealing with insane people, and trying to figure out the rationality of a crazy man will drive you insane, right? And these people are crazy. Again, when we're talking Boris Johnson, and some don't understand the conflict that they're looking at. They think they're just going after another Saddam army. They're not. The Russians are in there. The Chinese are in there. The Russians and Chinese have a pact. When you go to war with one of them, you're going, it's like Article 5 for NATO. A war against one is a war against them all. This pulls everybody in. I think Finland and Sweden, if they have a defense pact, that's probably the safest way for them to go. If they join NATO, they're in the war whether they want to be or not, so they have no option to get out. That type of thing. So Canada, again, wherever the States goes to war, we go to war. Trudeau will follow. It's just in what capacity? I think we go in lighter capacity. If it's a frontline combat role, Trudeau will send in peacekeepers. Get them killed. I mean, he's not a military-minded person at all. He'll do whatever he's told. but to what degree? So he pulled out the CF-18s, but left the ground troops there with no air cover. That's the kind of, that's the kind of decisions Trudeau makes. I'm like, you're either in or you're out. If you're going to have our guys there, keep the air cover there. But we shouldn't be in there in the first place. We shouldn't be with the Kurds if the Turks are going to be bombing them. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to get our guys killed by what's supposedly supposed to be our allies. Again, when Turkish pilots kill our Canadian soldiers on the ground there, exactly, what's our response going to be? Are we going to go to war with Turkey? You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. Trudeau will probably call for peace and say, now's not the time to get divisionary, and we should apologize to the Turks for racism and bigotry and sexism, and so that's what Trudeau, it's really, he's shameful. He is shameful. Anyway, I guess I'll leave it at about that. If you like this kind of content, please consider making a donation to the channel. Links down below. Thank you so much to everybody who has. Next to that, rate, subscribe, share, comment, like. Be true to yourself. Be true to others. Always do the right thing. And have yourselves a great day. Eh? G'day, and welcome. All right. My new method of doing the World War IIIs and stuff like that, I think it's going quite well. My Google AdSense got paid yesterday. Well, saw what I'm going to get paid. It takes them a while to deposit it. It helped out a bit. I can only imagine what it'd be without the censorship. And I think YouTube has backed off a little bit too because I get so many people complaining. So, I know I got at least another month out of this anyway. I'm on the wire still, but I can keep that going for at least another month. After the election in the States, and the fact that up here Justin Trudeau has signed CETA, which I think has a lot of media stuff in it. Basically, at some point, my channel might not be viewable in your country, let alone my own country. Everything's going to be banned at some point. So I don't know what the plan B is from there. But I'll take these as far as we can go. And anyway, I got some short stuff here, but we'll just start in on Yemen. Now, there's two incidents right now. There's apparently 2 missiles that were fired at the USS Mason. And apparently something else yesterday or the day before. But they can't really say for sure what it was that was fired. And they came in very close to shore. Why would they come in that close? But anyway, so they could be trying to set up a way for the United States to fight Yemeni directly. Because really, if you're fighting Yemen, you're fighting Iran. And that could be a stepping stone to get into Iran. So, because the Houthis are basically fighting with Saudi Arabia. But anyway, we'll have to keep an eye on that. So, 2.3 billion from the UK, and I forget how many billion from the United States to support the White Helmets. Now, 145 of them have been killed out of the 3,000. Now, these questionable White Helmets, the ones that are supposed to be getting Peace Prize awards, anybody that gets a Nobel Peace Prize, I really, really, really question now. Obama got a Nobel Peace Prize for what exactly? I don't know, for being the first black president or something like that. Created more war than anybody else. The thing is that the Peace Prize, it doesn't seem to represent real true peace. These White Helmets are George Soros funded and many other funded, they're basically, they're not the good guys. Maybe some of them are, but it's like the United Nations. There's a handful in the United Nations that actually believe they're doing world peace. They don't realize they're working for a Rockefeller organization to enslave the world. And again, these people are more believing that, well, the UN is such a good holier than thou, it should control the world. They don't really, they're utopianistic, right? But then the people at the top, they do everything George Soros wants, and Rothschilds and Rockefellers, right? And they fund NATO and give the green light to go to war everywhere. That type of thing. So the United Nations is definitely a corrupt organization. That said, Boris Johnson over there in the UK, I don't know much about him. I've heard a lot of mixed emotions about this guy. I don't know him that well. But I listened to about a 15-minute speech of his. And in that, yes, he is a neocon. I keep hearing how he's communist-leaning, or New World Order communist-leaning. I don't know if that's really true or not, but he does seem to be a bit altruistic, a bit anti-white, open mass immigration. We have to help everybody else but ourselves, that type of thing. He does come off that way from the little bit that I know about him. The other thing is, and this is all the stuff I really care about, is what they say. he's talking about the no-fly zone in Syria, and basically to shoot down Russian jets. Basically, he doesn't say Russia, but who else is flying in there, right? Say we need to enforce a no-fly zone. So he's talking about British fighter pilots shooting down Russian pilots. It's bad enough, okay, from this side of the pond to even think about what the consequences would be. That is a damn fly. I'm going to call you Hillary. Go away, Hillary. It's a Hillary fly. Did I catch it? No. I gotta get my fly killing thing. But for the UK to shoot down a Russian jet being that close to Russia, that is a really, really, really bad idea. You really want to avoid that as much as possible. Like I get it. The British equipment is pretty good, but the numbers aren't there. The British soldiers are good. The numbers aren't there. It's the same problem we have in Canada. Our soldiers, our pilots, our Navy guys, they're excellent, but there's just not enough of them. So really, you want to be the one spearheading the campaign to shoot down Russian jets. Now, there's a lot going on in Syria right now. Stuff that, for most of you that following, you're probably going to start to see some new equipment coming in on the scene. We know about the S-300s and stuff like that. The S-300s protects the fighters up in the air, the Su-34s. The Su-34 pilots, these guys are a caliber up from the Su-24 pilots, although the roles are similar. The Su-34 is kind of the replacement. The Su-30 pilots are going to be good pilots. These aren't going to be nugget pilots. These guys are going to, they don't just throw anybody in those super fighters. These are very powerful machines. The Su-34s, although it's a fighter bomber, they train to dogfight with these things against Su-27s and win from time to time. They're very maneuverable for their size and weight. They've got long range, very powerful radar jamming, etc., etc. And working that with the air defense systems on the ground and a few other systems on the ground, the Russians are really locking down Syria. They pretty much, maybe not officially, but you could say they've just established the no-fly zone. So it's not about NATO or the UK establishing a no-fly zone in Syria. The Russians already have. They already have. They've got the S-300 system coming in there. The Panzer S-1s, they're in there. Again, as I come down my list here, you'll see what I mean. So that guy, again, I don't know where he stands, what he is, I don't know if he's just a prominent politician or if he's, I don't know what his role is there in the UK. I've heard his name tossed around a few times, but I don't know him very well. But everything I keep hearing about him, and then, of course, listening to him speak for about 15 minutes,